Grace thought. Scared and hungry. You might tell yourself you didn't notice any of that. You'd focus on the smell of bread or cookies or whatever you were hungry for, and march right up to the pretty red door. But Grace had heard enough stories about who was behind that door to know what was what. She gazed up at that cottage, cozy on the surface, but full of magic and spookiness underneath, and fell in love with it right then and there. It was everything she'd ever hoped for in a home. Windweaver settled in a pear tree, his black feathers rustling. "What do you think?" Grace whispered.
"It's definitely the witch. I asked the other crows."
Windweaver spoke into her mind, a fluttery and slightly ticklish feeling like the brush of feathers. Windweaver was the name the crow had chosen for himself. Actually, he'd chosen Prince Windweaver of the Azure Bower, but Grace only called him that on special occasions. Grace nodded. Crows knew all about witches and magic in general. "Is she home?"
"How am I supposed to know?"
he said irritably. Before he met Grace, Windweaver hadn't been able to talk. Not to people, anyway. Crows have their own secret language, and he still wasn't used to it. Then he sighed.
"I suppose I could look in her windows."
He soared into the night, just another shadow. Grace waited, her stomach in knots. It was in moments like this, when she wasn't watching for roots in the darkness or listening for the clop-clop of hooves coming up behind her, someone sent to drag her back to the orphanage, that she felt most afraid. What if she had to make her way back through that rough forest, along those country lanes gone ghostly in the darkness? No. She set her jaw, and her hand tightened on her walking stick. Whatever happened, she wasn't going back. She drew herself up and stood gazing at the cottage, imagining that she was a noble princess who had traveled through untold hardships to seek a favor from a wicked queen. One of the curtains twitched, and she leaped behind a tree with a squeak.
"Somebody's home,"
Windweaver said, settling noiselessly in the branches.
"I saw a shadow moving behind the shutters."
Grace drew in a deep breath, trying to be the noble princess again. But while she might have had the courage of a princess, she didn't have the knees of one. They were quaking like anything.
"Are you sure about this?"
Windweaver said.
"Do you really want to live with a witch?"
"I want to learn about my magic." Grace kicked a rock. "Besides, who else but a witch would want me?" She tried to shrug as she said it, but it felt false. The truth was that Grace longed for a home more than anything in the world. "It's not as if my parents are coming back," she added, looking at the ground. Windweaver gave a soft croak and hopped onto her shoulder. He was Grace's dearest friend. Well, actually, he was her only friend, and he always knew what she was feeling.
"Maybe they will."
"No. Either they're dead or they're away across the sea, having adventures. Either they can't come back or they don't want to." Grace kept her voice hard to scare away the tears, but her eyes stayed dry. The only piece of her parents she had was a blurry photograph. She couldn't remember them at all. She'd been too little when they were lost at sea, as Mrs. Spencer said, a phrase Grace liked, for it made her think of desert islands and monkeys and lagoons. Though Mrs. Spencer had also said that Grace's father was a no-good sea captain who dragged her mother along with him on his fishing trips, sometimes even going past Cape Breton in the smallest, ugliest boat you ever saw, till everyone knew the sea was no place for a lady. Windweaver cleaned a leaf from her hair.
"I bet they're having adventures."
"I think so, too," Grace said. Mrs. Spencer knew them. She said sometimes they came back to shore without any fish, just these funny golden skins, like from an otter if otters came in gold, and wooden chests with symbols carved in them. And Mrs. Spencer said it, so you know it must be true. That's the benefit of having no imagination, isn't it? You can always be relied upon for plain facts. Windweaver nodded.
"I bet they became pirates."
Grace pressed her lips together. She always tried not to think about the other thing that might have happened to her parents, although she supposed that being lost at sea was a romantic way to die. After all, there were people like Sarah Haberdasher, whose parents got consumption and wasted away. There was no mystery in that at all, she thought.